I am Promise Okoy. I'm here today with the CEO, Tribe Network. Tribe Network is given to initiatives of within the black community, people of color. They provide some assistance to entrepreneurs and so on. And we're privileged and excited to speak with the one on top of leadership in this organization. It's good to have you in the studio, Alfred.
Can you tell us a little more about yourself and your journey to becoming the CEO of Tribe Network?
For sure. First of all, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for involving me in this project. Anytime I get a chance to share my message or to talk about what we do, I always take it. Okay. I know there are a lot of people that are often shy to be seen, but I actually think it's really important for us to be seen because there are people that are looking up to us. And so really excited about this project that you're working on, and feel blessed to be a part of it. About me, so I'm from Ghana originally, born in Ghana, and grew up in Ghana till I was 6 years old, and then immigrated to Cape Breton. So immigrated to Cape Breton, Port Hawkesbury, small town in Cape Breton. And we moved to Cape Breton because my dad was an engineer in Ghana. And when we immigrated to Canada, they said he has to start all over again. He has to get us recertified, right? So we ended up in Port Hawkesbury because Port Hawkesbury has a nautical institute where it's all about engineering and naval engineering. And so we moved to Port Hawkesbury, and I was there for about 10 years. Yeah, I was in Port Hawkesbury for about 10 years before moving to Halifax, and moved to Halifax for high school. And in high school, growing up, I was a basketball player. Basketball was what I wanted to do, and it was what my goal was in life. I was young, right? I didn't know any better, but I loved the sport. My brother played basketball, so that inspired me as well. I saw him get a scholarship, right, using basketball, so I was like, okay, I can do that. But growing up, loved basketball, grew up playing basketball until high school is when I got introduced to entrepreneurship, right? And that happened through an after-school program called Junior Achievement. And that's really when I realized that there was something else that I loved, there was something else that I was good at, right? Like my peers would always be looking at me for advice or like, Alfred, what do you think we should do, right? And so Junior Achievement allowed me the environment where, we built a company in school, and over the course of the year, we grew this company, and students were empowered to come up with different marketing tactics, different pricing strategies, different engagement strategies, and that's when I realized that there's something outside of basketball that I enjoy and something that I wanted to pursue. So high school was the introduction for entrepreneurship world. Universities, when I started my own first real business, digital media and technology company. So we would help different companies adopt digital media, right? And did that in Halifax for a couple of years. And, through that experience as a first-time founder, I think that's when I started to realize that there was a gap in the ecosystem for people like us. Right? Because I would be engaging with the existing ecosystem, but it didn't seem like people either wanted to help me or didn't know how to help me. And I didn't get the support that I was looking for in that early days. And I didn't see you or I in some of these spaces, you know what I mean? And so when people ask me all the time, like, tell us the story of Tribe, it definitely started 10 years ago. You know what I mean? When I noticed that gap in the inclusivity of the ecosystem and the supports that are being provided to entrepreneurs like us. And so, I had my own business for a couple of years. I tried to navigate the ecosystem. I didn't get the support that I was looking for. Didn't feel like I belonged in the ecosystem. And went off, after a couple of years of running my first business, I went on to work with the Assembly of First Nations. Which is like the indigenous government in Canada. And through that experience, that's when I realized that, oh my God, there are people that don't even know incubators exist, accelerators exist. You know what I mean? Like I just learned that these people are not even a part of this ecosystem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't even know it exists. The physical space exists, the programs exist, the funding exists. They don't even know it exists. And so I had a few instances where I realized that, oh, there's a gap in the ecosystem, without a question. And it wasn't until I worked with the Senate of Canada during the pandemic. I was doing some research with the Senate. And in that role, I was a project lead for an inclusive entrepreneurship research project. And through that work, I had the chance to meet with entrepreneurs like myself from across the country, right? And interview them and survey them, and also interview Black business serving organizations. And through that experience is when I realized that, oh, this gap that I experienced, or this gap that I anecdotally heard from the Indigenous community, is on paper. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, I'll share one of the stats that was quite telling of the ecosystem supports is that we asked Black founders, if you had to get $10,000 for your business, do you know where to go to get $10,000? Would you be able to get $10,000? And 75% of the respondents says they don't know where to go to get $10,000 for the business.
Wow.
Right?
That's shocking to know. That means, like you said in your words, that you realized that there was a gap.
Yeah.
And that did not, in the scheme of things, people like you and I were not, there were no thinking or no plans to have us included in those plans. But so when you started the tribe, network organization, I guess you went in to fill those gaps.
100%.
Those things you found.
100%. So the goal was, how do we provide money, but then how do we provide supports with that money, whether it's mentorship, coaching, workshops, training, community, right? So, you know, I took my personal experience and took that research that we gathered. That was, I would say, the push that I needed to think, oh, like, I know enough to be able to create something that can be a solution to this gap.
Now, how has that impacted the Black, Indigenous, and people of color within this ecosystem you've talked about? And given your majors, the KPIs, if you have any, what can you see has been the story so far?
So, for sure. I think at the baseline, access to information and networks is key, right? Back to your, you know, what you said about, like, if we don't know that these things exist, these resources exist, how can we ever access them, right? And so at the baseline, one thing that we've done since day one is we send out a weekly newsletter that are updates, right? There are updates on what funding is available in the ecosystem, what jobs are available in the ecosystem, what programs are out there for us. And so since, you know, the first year of starting Tribe, we've been pretty consistent in sending those weekly updates. You know, before launching any program, we actually went to each of the 4 provinces, brought entrepreneurs together to identify, like, how can we best serve you? And since then, we've engaged with over 500 entrepreneurs across the Atlantic. We've dispersed over about $300,000 to entrepreneurs, both directly and indirectly through consultants that are working with them. We've hosted dozens of events, bringing the community together. We've helped founders raise capital, right? It's not just us supporting them and getting supports for their businesses or to hire consultants, but we've actually helped founders through connections raise millions of dollars for their startups. So those are a few things. Now for me, it's still early, you know what I mean? It feels like we're still at the early stages, which we are. We're only in year 3, right? And so
the prospect, obviously, it's looking bright, the future for you.
I hope so.
Before we get into your role as CEO, reflecting on that, just wanted to ask, pre the interview, you talked about bridges, connecting people, cultures and stuff. Tell me a little more about that now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, like, I worked with the Assembly of First Nations, so, you know, there's a body that's servicing strictly First Nations, right, and Indigenous peoples, and I respect organizations, groups, and communities that are created to service a certain group of people, right? You've got that, you might have the BBI, there's different groups that service, newcomers or specifically, let's say, people from the Middle East, right? Like, having these individual groups is important, but I believe that if we can create a community where we can all come together and learn with each other, I think that we can be much stronger. And so for me, I think I see value in creating the space for us to come together. I also see value in spaces where, Black women can go and get the support that they're looking for. Middle Eastern people can go, but I also see value in having us come together and to learn with each other.
Great one, I believe. Of course, together is stronger, right? And let's talk about your role. What really attracted you to the role of the CEO? Because looking at you, obviously you quite a young person. A lot of people will expect some gray-haired, elderly people. But
I'm starting to get some grays. Okay, don't look too close. I'm starting to get some grays. I have some grays in my hair and my beard now.
we
Okay.
need to see them full. All right. Tell us what attracted you really to this role.
I mean, honestly, like, from day one, the whole idea was, how do I build something that outlives me? Like, for real, like, you know what I mean? Like, before launching Tribe, I was working a lot in like short-term projects here and there as a consultant. But honestly, before launching Tribe, the question that I asked myself was, am I willing to commit to this for the next 10 years, minimum? Am I willing to commit to this for the next 10 years, right? And the whole thought process was, this is a big issue. When it comes to the disparities that our communities face, this is a big issue, right? And if these barriers have lasted hundreds of years, I'm sorry, but we're not going to fix this in a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's going to take that kind of time to get to a place where we are equal or we have equal access to opportunity, right? So from day one, my whole thing was like, Alfred, if you're going to do this, this is not a 1-year contract. This is not a 6-month contract. This is not a 3-month thing. Like, this is a commitment. And I think in a way, like, that's been, for me, I think the strength has been because of my experience in the ecosystem. Like, it's almost as though the things that we're doing, I think back to what are the things that I wanted to have access to, right? What are the kind of workshops I wanted? Who are the kind of mentors or coaches I wanted to have access to? What kind of funding did I want to have access to? What kind of experiences outside of the province that I want to have access to? You know what I mean? And so I think because of my lived experience, it's put me in a unique position to be able to create programming and to create opportunities that can actually fill that gap.
Sounds very much like you don't want the vision to die, the dream that you have for this whole thing to die off. Right? So
Oh,
you
no.
want it to stay on course.
Yeah.
And then probably share it with the people who join you later on. But what has been most rewarding for the role you currently play as CEO? What has been the testimonies? You said it already, that you can be perfect, and I agree with you. But tell us the other good side of some of the things you've done. Man,
It was a lot. And, I said it's been 3 years. It feels like it's already been 10 years. And it's taken a lot of people. Like, it's not just me, you know what I mean? I might be the face of the organization right now, but oh man, there's hundreds of people that have played a role in Tribe succeeding today. Everyone from, our funders at ACOA, our account manager there, different donors, different mentors and coaches who give their time to us. It's hard to pinpoint one moment, to be honest. It's really hard to pinpoint one moment that has been like a reward. This whole thing so far has been like, there are moments where I have to like pinch myself almost. And I'll give you an example, like this building that we're in right now.
Right.
I came to visit this building back in like 2017, right? This is when I had my first business. Didn't have a lot of resources, but a friend and I said, let's go look around, let's dream a little bit, let's see what's in the city. And we came to this building back in 2017. And I remember leaving being like, someday I would love to be in this building. You know what I mean? I don't have the means right now. When they told us how much it was going to cost, I just laughed and walked away. But it was like, someday, wouldn't it be incredible to create a co-working space where our members can access this kind of, infrastructure, can be in community together, host events together. So I think if I had to pick one thing, like maybe looking back and seeing how a dream or a seed that was planted is now like a reality, has been incredible. But to be honest, like it's such a hard question to answer because, man, every day seems like I feel lucky. You know what I mean? I feel lucky with the support that I'm getting. I feel lucky with the impact we're creating. I feel lucky with the team that we're building and the people that we're building this with, right? And so, yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
It's very interesting to know that, and I also know that there would have been some moments where would have been challenging for you, and sometimes in decision making of that nature, making some of those tough calls, because sometimes, especially for your role, I assume that the ball stopped on your table.
Yeah.
What has been those challenging moments for you?
Man.
Past 3 years of leading this organization.
Yeah. I'll share what I'll do is I'll share two examples, right? I'll share two like actual examples, and then you can take it where you want to take it. I think in any role when you're a leader, right? To other CEOs out there, you would understand this, which is, people, right? They're your greatest strength, but they're also the thing that requires the most attention.
That's right.
How you build your people. And then the second, cash flow. Do I have cash to be able to execute on the things the orders that I have, or the work that I'm doing, right? Do I have cash in the bank versus, there's receivables, but the money isn't there yet. You know what I mean? And so I think those two things would be the things that I've learned a lot about over the past couple of years, is managing people and managing cash flow. And trust me, there are moments when both those things go sideways and you're having to deal with people and human beings, right? And how do you take it out of the work context, be like, this is a human being that has needs, and so let me meet them at where they're at, versus trying to think about them getting this work done or meeting this KPI. You know what I mean? Like, they're human beings. So how do you balance the pressure to execute, the responsibility from your funders, taxpayers to execute, to the person, and like, how do you deal with that, right? And so that's been, there have been challenges there, and I'm learning how to do that well, right? And then the other thing is cash flow. It's like, that your funder is sending you money in 3 weeks, but next week you got to make payroll. And how are you going to make payroll? You know what I mean? And so literally, you got to make some tough calls and make some decisions on how you manage that. So I think those are the two things that for me, there was a learning curve in learning how to manage people and how to build them up, and then how to also ensure that, there's money committed, but it doesn't mean it's in your bank account. So how do you manage that well? Yeah.
And that tells me that you get to that point sometimes where you have competing demands. I assume you, just like the last example you gave, you expect an X amount, and what you have to expend on is pretty much more than that. And then those guys don't want to hear excuses.
No.
How do you actually balance this out? How do you handle those competing demands and challenges along the way as a CEO?
I mean, if you're dealing with people or scenarios, it gets contextual, right? Every situation is different depending on who you're working with, who you're talking to. In terms of me, how I deal with it all, I think, always kind of like zooming out and reminding myself of the bigger picture, right? It's like, I committed to this for 10 years. So I committed to the good, bad, the ugly, the rewards, all of it, right? And so I think for the most part, just like learning to lean in, right? Learning to lean into the where things are challenging versus turning away, because if you turn away from it, it's likely going to snowball into something bigger or worse. And so I think for any leader or CEO, like you have to run towards the challenges. And also there's certain things that no one else can fix in the business other than yourself.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I think you have to run towards it. You almost have to enjoy that, or else you're not gonna like the work. You know what I mean? And so I think for me, keeping the perspective of like, if it took 200 years or more to create these barriers that are in place for our communities, this is a long mission, and so. You may not see the results right away. It's not going to be easy. So just trying to keep that larger vision of like where I'm at, and keeping that long-term view in mind helps the short-term pain.
That's very interesting to know too. When I came in here, I was impressed with the way the organization is structured. Very vibrant young people here who are running things alongside you. And I was wondering, do you have some kind of templates that help you deal with different things? Because I know that CEO is expected to know everything, but that's usually not the reality.
Yeah, we don't know everything. I don't know everything, that's for sure.
How do you manage them? I mean, your team. And what would be your assessment so far with the set of people you're working with to achieve all that you currently achieve?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share what I do. It might be not right. I don't know, what's right for me, it might not be right for someone else. So I don't, it's hard to, sometimes it can be hard to give advice, right? Because it's like everything's so contextual, situational, and like, again, what I would do might not work in other scenarios. For me, one thing I've noticed is like, you definitely want to have time where the team is together, where you can be really intentional about the expectations that you want everyone to buy into, right? And there's moments where you have to kind of reiterate the vision. There's moments where you have to reiterate priorities at the time. And you want everyone to be in some of those conversations just so that there's understanding across the board. And then there are also moments where you have to meet with people one-on-one to coach them. You know what I mean? And I think the thing that I'm learning, and I will probably learn forever, is like the way that I would coach you is different than the way I would coach the next person, right? Based on who you are, how you respond, what your desires are in this role. So I think in terms of the question of how you manage these people, I think in a group setting, you always have to share key messages that allow to create this common agenda and this buy-in and the energy and the, people have to feel like they're moving forward, and that they're a part of moving forward. They're a part of setting the foundation that's going to propel us. So there's always a balance between creating that group environment to have those conversations and create that energy versus those one-on-one conversations where you're coaching someone, you're dealing with an issue, right? And at the end of the day, you're trying to balance the work getting done well and this person's needs. Absolutely. Right? So it's a forever evolving kind of challenge.
When you talked about the buy-in, I thought that was also very, very important point you made there, the coaching aspect, because what we're doing here, talking with you here, quite a number of other people who are probably aspiring to become CEO, to have organizations, entrepreneurs like you who will be employing or hiring other people to work with, and they need to learn from this. So that leads me to your leadership insights, basically to ask questions like, how would you describe your own leadership style and how has it evolved over time?
Wow. It's a good question. I mean, I think I try to lead by example as best as I can, right? So I would never ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I think as part of leadership, you have to have a sense of direction, right? So, people want to know where they're going.
That's right.
People don't just want to go blindly, right? And so I think it's really important for CEOs and leaders out there is like, doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. It really doesn't. Do the people that are working for you know that they're a part of reaching a goal or a part of reaching a destination? I think that's really important. However, the journey is where you really have to focus on, right? You have to reiterate the goal and why we're doing this, and whether it's, revenue targets or it's market opportunity or whatever that goal is, you have to reiterate that. But then you have to come back to reality and think about day to day, what are my actions, right? Day to day, am I empowering people to fail? You know what I mean? Like, am I allowing people to actually go to lead? So for me, I would describe my leadership style as ambitious. I'm someone who's ambitious, and I'm always challenging people to think bigger or to strive for more than they think they can do. I think I'm learning more and more how to allow people to fail, because I think that's an important part.
That's right.
Right? So I think I'm learning more how to do that. My default is to not allow someone to fail or fall down, and so I'm learning that as part of being a good leader is sometimes allowing people to lead the pack and to see what happens, and you can always come back and redirect and get back on the trail, but allowing people to also fail, I think, is something that I'm actively learning how to do, and empowering people to lead and to bring their ideas forward. But I'm learning. So I mess up sometimes, and sometimes I think, honestly, I'll say this. One of the hardest things as a leader and as a CEO is like, yes, you're the chief executive officer, but one of the hardest things that I've found is the need to control. You know what I mean? Like, if you're working on a project, and because you're the CEO, you might have high level context of what the partner wants, what the founders want, what other stakeholders are looking for, what the budget is saying in the back, right? So you have so much context that sometimes, for me, it's been hard to allow people to do certain things and then come back versus wanting to make sure that before they go out, do you have this packed? Do you have this? You know what I mean? Like, and it's almost like a parental kind of thing sometimes. But I think that's one thing that I'm learning is like, how do I loosen my grip on this and allow people to like create what they're wanting to create as part of this?
Absolutely. I feel you're a bit economical with words, because when I came in here, I was looking for the CEO, and you greeted me by the door, and that was good for me. It's a good impression, because there are a lot of organizations where you get in there, you can't miss the CEO, because
right.
It's a yes sir person that everyone is saying to, and I think that's a very good one. But let's say we have some key essentials for leadership, and some would help them succeed, some will help them in some cases to fail. But what are those very essential? And this time, let's talk about the positive side that could help a CEO or a leader succeed their role.
Humility.
Okay.
So being able to admit when you don't know something.
Right.
I think that's actually, you need to be able to say, I don't know.
Right.
Right?
You're human, right?
Yeah. And me not knowing something can allow someone who knows more about it to speak up and to arrive as a leader or to show up that way, right? So humility is definitely number one. I would also say having self-discipline is important, right? You know what you have to do it. Like, there's things that are administrative that you probably don't want to do, that you have to do it, right, to keep your business status strong and afloat. So humility, self-discipline, What else are, you said attributes, right, for positive leadership,
That's
kind of?
right, yeah.
I think you also have to have a high risk appetite,
Okay.
right? You have to be,
Measurable risk in a way.
what's that?
Measurable risk.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't- you don't
Yeah,
want down.
this is true. This is true. You need to
Valley.
be, what I'm really trying to say is you have to be comfortable taking risk,
That's right.
right? You have to be comfortable taking a risk.
That's right.
So humility, you know, being able to take risks. What else did I share?
It's up to you.
Humility. No, I shared another one just now.
Discipline.
Self-discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-discipline for sure. And then let's go back to the human point. Like,
Okay.
I think you have to meet people where they are.
That's right.
You have to learn how to adapt to the situation, right? And to know that you can't meet fire with fire.
No.
You know what I mean? You have to meet it with
Never works
something.
that way.
You know, it doesn't. So you have to be able. You have to have adaptability, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, like, this may be something that's changing in the world today, but like, I know my peers, the people that I work with,
Right.
they want to work with people they like. You know what I mean? Like, they want to work with people they like.
Yeah. And people you like in some cases are people who say the things you want to hear. Right. People who are doing things the way you want it. And when they come up with divergent ideas, you're like, hey, come on, I'm the leader here.
Right,
You tell me
right,
what to do. That's no way I
So
want us to
yeah,
go.
so you have to be open to that too.
Yeah.
As a leader, you have to be open to the fact that not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to say yes. Not everyone should say yes.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to be, you know, sometimes I find myself in rooms where I'm almost, you know, like, what are we thinking about? You know what I mean? Like, what is the opposite of what we're discussing right now? Because this sounds great. This is like energizing and we're all on the same page, but like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting.
Yeah, and there are moments where you have to be devil's advocate
Yeah.
in certain scenarios,
Oh, yeah.
because you know challenges will come up. You know things might not work out exactly how you're talking about it. So I find there are moments where you have to kind of be like, when you say what's the alternative, you literally mean like there's no other alternative. And then
That's a new one I'm learning today.
you know, what's the alternative when you know there's no other alternative?
But no alternative in some cases is an alternative. That means don't do anything. Let things as is, right?
Right.
All right. Let's talk about your company culture and values here. And what comes to mind when you talk about culture and values is how you foster that here in the tribe. What is it like? Like, how do you foster positive organizational culture? And how are the people buying into that culture, taking it away?
Yeah, so I'll start with what we have on paper versus what I think is the reality.
Interesting.
So before, you know, Tribe launched, we brought together some board members, some team members in the early days, and we discussed what do we want our values to be, right? This is a social contract that we're all agreeing to. So we identified 4 main values, and the 4 we identified were lead with love, okay, nurture community, inclusive leadership, and creativity, practicing creativity. Those are the 4 main values we identified.
That's on paper.
That's on paper. And it's not so much different from what we do in person. I just mean that to say, like, it's aspirational.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think culture is ever something that is like set in stone.
No, it evolves.
It evolves. It can change tomorrow when someone else walks in the door. You know what I mean? Or if someone is sick and isn't here, it changes, right? So culture is something that is fluid, but I would say is incredibly important to focus on culture and to make sure that there's buy-in from everybody about the culture you're trying to build. And so that's what I mean by on paper versus what you see. Now, what we do at Tribe is when we are evaluating people's performances, it's not all about what you did in work. It's also about, are you someone that is showing up in the values of the organization,
Right.
right? And so literally, like, we've had evaluations where it's like, you've been great, you've got all the work done, but these couple things related to our values and the culture we're trying to build need improvement. You know what I mean? And so, or the other way, where it's like, you're perfect on the values, but like, the performance in terms of the work day to day, we got some improvement. And so, values are essential to building your culture, absolutely. And now what I mean by what's on paper is different from what you see in person is, first of all, everyone will interpret these values differently.
That's right.
Right? So literally, someone expressing what they deem to be leading with love could be received as something else.
That's right.
Right? But I think the important piece of all this is reiterating to the team in those settings that, like, hey, like, we're being evaluated by this, whether it's ourselves internally holding ourselves accountable or people on the external, because we've put this out there to say these are our values, and at any point someone can come to us and say, you're not doing it. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about the team we have. I'm excited about the energy we have. Like you said earlier, we've got some young people, smart people, incredibly talented individuals, and all in all, like, you know, people chip in to help. You know, when help is needed, people chip in, people step up.
So what I believe is that those values are not put out there for decoration. Basically, are things that you implement, and from time to time you remind people who work with you. But has those values actually changed, you know, your direction, changed your decision as an organization? Has it been able to put you right on track and having you achieve your vision as a company?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. I think it does day to day, right? There's ways that there's ways that we could react to something externally that we have a choice to make, whether we want to respond in a way that's aligned with our values or respond and meet that energy that's not aligned with our values in that same way. So yeah, I'll say that this is something that day to day, I think, definitely impacts the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and how we engage with people externally, how we engage with each other internally. So yeah, it's definitely something that is top of mind for team members, because again, it is something that we are getting evaluated on.
Right. Now, talking about achievement and milestones, what can you say you're most proud of as CEO of Tribe Network here?
Yeah, I can share a couple. Like, for example, you know, the one that we love to share and, you know, is a shining light in terms of the potential we know exists in the community is one about a young startup that was based in PEI.
Okay.
Founders immigrated from Zimbabwe, one was from Kenya, the other two were from Colombia. They moved to Prince Edward Island as students. And during the pandemic, they launched an app, and they launched a fintech product, right? So financial technology product.
Okay.
And they launched this product because they, as newcomers, experienced challenges building their credit, right? Building their credit score. And they wanted to build a financial tool that would help people build their credit. And so what they did was they built this platform called Wovio. Okay, and what Wovio does is Wovio allows their members to do group savings, right? So let's say you and me wanted to do a group savings. Every week we put $10 into an account, and if you need money, you can use it. If I need money, I can use the cumulative pot, right? So they built this product. They built, you know, partnerships with Equifax so that Equifax would actually count that $10 as a payment to build your credit, right? And I'm sharing this one because through a connection we made with Wovio and some investors we are connected to out in Toronto, Wovio in the last, was it 2 years now? Last 2.5 years have raised over $3.5 million.
Whoa.
Right?
That's huge.
They've built a team.
Yeah.
This product is now serving thousands of people, right? So I think we always have to remember that the work we do has ripple effects.
Okay.
It should have ripple effects.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Whether it's on the company that we're supporting or the person that we're supporting, like how do we ensure that we're able to bring value such that other people that are around them or that are using their product, that are ultimately benefiting from the product, also get value too.
That's interesting. And in the midst of all of these things, have you experienced any setback? We've seen organizations that start up a year after their profit due to some maybe relationship with their founders or financiers or whatever it is. Have there been any setback that is major that you want to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, I won't share the details. I definitely won't share the details about some of these things, just to protect the relationship slash the just I think there's some things that that I just don't feel comfortable sharing without permission, right? But I would say, yeah, there have been key moments where, like again, there are key moments where you either don't manage well, whether it's in setting expectations for somebody or, meeting their needs, their human needs, as opposed to the work that they're there to do. So there have been moments where, I haven't seen eye to eye with somebody, right? And things fall apart, both in the relationship that you have with the person, but also then the work suffers because you're dealing with a split, someone's moving on, then you got to take on double work or you got to give double work to somebody else. There's months before you can rehire. And so it happens and it can be very tough. But to be honest, I think that I'm someone who, I like a challenge. I never like to be in a scenario where a relationship is deteriorating.
Right.
Never that. But I would say that in general, I'm someone that responds well to a challenge, and I think maybe through playing sports competitively, it's one of those things where it's like we're down 10, but like we're gonna win this game. You know what I mean? Like there's no questions asked. Like when you're playing the game, you're not asking whether or not we're gonna win. You are winning. You know what I mean? Like there's no alternative.
That's interesting. It sounds like there's resilience in this statement you're trying.
You have to be resilient. You have to be resilient. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, but talking about growth, you as head of an organization like this and staying up to date with what happens elsewhere in other organizations similar to yours, how have you been staying informed and evolved as a CEO?
Great question. So, I mean, I have a great board of directors,
Okay.
and that board is people that are experienced in running organizations like this. Some have been doing it for 20 years, some have been doing it for 5 years, so some are my age, some are a little older, have wisdom to share. So I do get a lot of wisdom and great advice from my board of directors. Now, I'll say this, any CEO, any leader, find a coach, right? Find a coach, someone who can help you along the journey, and someone who can also say the things that the people around you don't want to say.
That's right.
Or that are scared to say, or that are shy to say. And like I had an experience recently where someone connected me with a coach from the US, and this person used to work at Microsoft, was a part of building teams across the world for Microsoft. And within a 20-minute phone conversation with this individual, it felt like a whole nother side of my brain opened up. You know what I mean? In terms of how to deal with people. And it was so interesting. It was so interesting, and so much value captured in such a short interaction. And so, yeah, there's, I feel blessed to have access to people like that who can impart their knowledge on me.
Do you have specific mentors or influencers, people who have influenced your leaderships currently here I mean, people you look up to. Like, I mean, what you've said basically means look for someone who you can learn from, right? So you don't run dry of ideas and all of that.
Yeah.
Are there specific ones you
Yeah.
look up to?
For sure. Now, like, some are in reach, some are people that I have relationships with, and some are also people I'm watching from afar, right? I'll share that. So locally, yes, I oftentimes, there's another CEO within the startup ecosystem, serving founders who I'll meet with, and I'll be able to share very things that maybe I don't share other people on the team or whatever else. I'll be able to share, get his advice and get his feedback, and he'll be able to shoot it straight. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what you have to work on. Here's what is urgent. And sometimes it's also like, dude, chill. You're okay. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's like you're being a little too hard on yourself, or you're being a little too hard. Your expectations are unfair, right? So there's people locally that I have that time with that are in similar roles in other organizations.
Right. Let's speak to aspiring leaders, people who look like you, people who maybe who would wish to be, Alfred. What would be your advice to them to becoming number one in an organization? What would be your general advice to this set of people?
I think first and foremost, play to your strengths. Whether or not they're appreciated in the environment that you're in, I would say play to your strengths, right? For example, one of my biggest things is like, I like to envision a future that doesn't exist. Other people find that intimidating. Other people find that like a waste of time, as a distraction, right? But I guarantee you that I would not be able to get my team to execute or to work, to build, to get founders involved in this. We would not be able to do the work that we're doing if there wasn't someone thinking about a world that didn't exist, or thinking about scenarios that literally don't exist, and saying them out loud, and seeing like, and almost like willing it into existence, be like, yeah, this doesn't exist yet, but like we should do this, we can do this, why not?
Why not?
All right, and so I think you have to be yourself through and through, and play to your strengths, regardless of how people around you respond to them.
I agree with you. That should be a good place for people of color to be, actually. But what are some of those specific challenges that, especially the Black community of entrepreneurs in this case, are facing, and how have you been able to help address them? Because I know you deal with a lot of people. They come in here for different things. Help finance, business, and I mean, I don't know how you do it, but what are those things that they come to you regularly?
Access to funding is huge, right? I mentioned earlier that 75% of Black founders and entrepreneurs said they wouldn't know where to go to get access $10,000, right? So we provide grant funding for entrepreneurs, whether it's direct or we'll hire consultants to work with you. So grant funding is huge. Access to mentors and coaches is a huge thing, which is also what we offer, right? So we have a roster of mentors and coaches that entrepreneurs can look through and identify, okay, I need someone to help me with legal work. Okay, let me talk to a mentor that has experience in legal, or I need to talk to someone about marketing. Let me go on there and talk to someone about marketing. So funding, the mentorship and coaching, the access to network. So, this company had a PEI, like they didn't know that there was a Black investor looking for them, right? But the investor came to me and said, hey, do you know anybody in the Atlantic that we should invest in? And I made, and the connection was made, right? So we have access to a network that not everybody does. And it's like, how do we share that network with people when it's relevant? Obviously, we're not going to put someone in a situation they're not ready for, right? But for the most part, how do we, as much as possible, bring these opportunities down to the people who want them, are ready for them, and can actually follow through on them?
There is one I saw, Tribe Ventures or something like that. I guess it has to do with some kind of partnership between African Canada of some sort. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so Tribe Ventures is back to the investment platform,
Okay.
right? So Tribe Ventures will be an investment vehicle where we'll raise money and then we'll invest that money into startups.
That's a good one. But in closing, I just wanted to find out, finally, is there anything else you want to share in your experience as CEO here to our viewers as we wrap up?
You know, if you're in the role, know that you're supposed to deal with the hardest things
Right.
in the role.
Yeah. I don't shy away from
Don't shy away from them.
them.
Go towards them.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to enjoy it.
Right.
Know that. You're not going to enjoy it always. It's not always going to be easy. But if you're someone who gets excited about a challenge, the role is for you.
That's right.
If you're someone who does not want to deal with the challenge, then it might not be the role for you.
That's
And I also think it's really important to to know your role.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, to play to your strengths.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It could have been a better place to leave it. Thank you so much, Alfred, for your time and
Thank you.
sharing your experience with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much for watching the Mall TV. On today's episode, we had the privilege of speaking to Alfred Burgesson, who is the CEO of Tribe Network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos for episodes that comes afterwards. And when you're